WTO, or stay out of the WTO's face.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question.
That begins a cultural movement too, right? Because people support their friends and their businesses of their friends and vice versa.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I bought local from Sound Solar, and James has worked in ironworking, which in theory can be put towards oil production instead. So I mean, he's been able to transition into a career that has a future, as I see it, as opposed to trying to stick with coal or oil. Like, we could have SAS Power pick winners and decide to hand out another contract to SNC Lavalin, who have been crooks in Quebec, but why not structure it so that it can go to oil field workers who are already capable of pouring cement, working with steel, and creating structures, and then build a concentrated solar plant at Estevan.
Yeah.
But how do we get them to do that?
Yeah, so now that
you really don't want a concentrated solar plant because they don't produce in cloudy weather. They only produce when the sun shines. So you'd be better off putting it in California, somewhere in the desert, and transferring it back to Canada.
Even the great distance transmission wouldn't be a problem, maybe?
At
Or
least you're getting power. Like, you only get power when the sun's shining, full sun.
full sun, okay.
You can't concentrate cloudy weather, and you'd be better off with just ordinary PV panels. Now the efficiency's up. A lot of the producers are getting 20%. When I started a few years ago, we were using 8% panels. You get 20%, my God, the price is way down now. Well, just 5 years ago, we were charging for a 100-watt panel, I think over $1,100, and now they're under 300. They go from 200 to 300. So you can see the price reduction. And the efficiency and the quality of them is much better. But one thing the feed-in tariff did in Ontario was got those manufacturers to come, and they're still there, even though they removed the requirement for Ontario content. And they're still there, and I buy a lot of my panels from there because they're selling them to us in Canadian dollars.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be a
still
big
boosted
issue
the
now.
industry.
We've got the Canadian dollar tanks, so there's going to be more demand within Canada for those local manufacturers.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So that's the upside of the low oil, low dollar. But yeah, the concentrating solar, I had it in the model, but it comes in quite expensive. So in none of the models do I build concentrating solar.
But it's really nice to have concentrating solar on the desert because you can store heat a lot easier than you can store electricity in batteries. And so the contracts that they were being released, they would have a 270 megawatt plant, firm power, and they'd be able to generate till at least midnight or 1 o'clock, and then the gas turbines cut in to fill the void. So their contract was for firm power. It looked pretty good, and it still does in deserts.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that question then. What's the pathway? And I think there's still more work to be done on storage. We have the one demonstration project, which is great, and we've learned a lot from it. But now it'd be interesting to look at what can we do for compressed air storage in old potash mines, or are there opportunities for pumped hydro? So I think that's where I'd like to see research dollars go, and it'd be nice to see that happen in our province. You've got a question?
Yes. I'm just concerned about the carbon capture thing, because you mentioned that a while ago. I mean, perhaps talking about it as a transitional mode, with one working on solar and wind, getting that established. But how safe have you come across any studies? Studies I've looked at, there are some problems with carbon capture, especially because of the potential contamination of drinking water and the hydrology.
Okay, so in my research, I looked at pathways that competed with each other. So one pathway would be a carbon capture and storage pathway, because I wanted to see how renewables stacked up against these other pathways. The main issue with carbon capture and storage in Saskatchewan has been the cost. In terms of what I've found, it's been much more expensive than we realized. It's been more expensive than wind. It's been more expensive than even solar at the utility scale. So I don't know enough about whether it does damage the hydrology, but just from an economic perspective, I mean, the thing, I mean, you can understand, I guess, the thinking where you've got coal, you've got a workforce, you've got plants, you can keep them viable. You've got a history, like there's a really rich history of coal mining in Saskatchewan. I just read a book about the Bean Fake coal miners' strike in 1929, I want to say, 39. Tommy Douglas was down there helping them out. There's rich history. They've got a monument to 3 miners who were killed by the RCMP. So there's a coal culture in that region, and even, I mean, some would argue there's provincially a coal culture. I don't know how much that's true nowadays. I think that's changing within SAS Power, for example. They're very open to looking at all the other pathways. So it's good to see. And we'll see if they do. Their big choice now is whether to do Boundary Dam units 3 and 4, whether to convert them, or if they don't convert them, they have to retire within the next 7 or 8 years. So that's their big decision. My research, to get the same emission reductions as retrofitting those plants, you could achieve the same emission reductions by just building natural gas plants instead of them at a lower cost. So I think that when they start to look at the numbers, it's going to be difficult to justify extending those projects. The existing plants will probably go on, so Poplar River is going to go on until 2030 before it has to retire, Shan to 2042 potentially, unless there's a move to phase out coal. And so in the green and grid scenario, I look at phasing out coal by 2030 and getting off of it completely. With the exception of Boundary Dam, letting Boundary Dam run out its expected life. It's already built. We spent the $1.5 billion, so no need to throw it out.
What about natural gas plants and methane leakage? That's a real problem, actually.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the worse than probably coal when it comes to when you're talking about climate change effects.
Yeah, methane's got like 21 times more potent.
It's pretty bad.
Than CO2.
Yeah.
I think those are good things to think about. In my model, I didn't include the potential for methane leaks, and I didn't include the life cycle emissions, which would include fugitive emissions through the life cycle of natural gas. But it's probably worth looking at that, because then it's another reason to move away from fossil fuels quicker.